So you can see now that we're all playing like Robert.
The cha cha cha. There you go.
Cha cha cha. Let me go this way. Let me go this way.
Now I gotta get that one, man.
Cha cha
The
cha.
cha
You
cha
gotta get
cha
that
thing.
one.
All right, so 10 exercises taken directly from the training plan that I'm providing to my students. I'm providing to those of you who are following this. You can call it an experiment. And if you're not following it, if you haven't seen these exercises before, try to pause the video every time I present to you a new exercise, right? And work on it. And then you continue with the video, listen to the answer. So we have 10 exercises. The first one right here, it is white pieces to move. And the first things that should come to mind are 96 is a fork. So I'm hitting the queen and the king. And of course, we have rook f7 that is a check. These are candidate moves that need to pop up right away. And then you try to put them together, right? Now, rook f7 by itself, it doesn't seem to do anything. Rook takes, knight takes, king takes. If you put them in check again, they simply hide. So the idea is, well, I want to make this fork work, but the pawn takes me. So we combine the two ideas, and after rook f7, there's no one guarding the easy square, so you're gonna go 96 with your fork. Now, those of you who are a little bit more advanced, those of you who know how to approach these positions, I'm trusting you actually went a little bit further and thought, well, what if they don't take the rook? What if they simply go down? If I'm black, I'm going to think, well, I'd rather lose a pawn and leave the rook on my seventh rank than just losing the queen, right? Well, if you consider this and you treated it as a brand new position, then you should have considered the move rook to g7 check. If you take with the knight, that's checkmate. If instead you take with the rook, you get the same fork. And of course, they do have the option to. Sorry about that. They do have the option to ignore it once more, but then you take, and after king g7, you could do, if you think, you could go queen h3, you could go rook g7, king goes back, rook g6, and then this is just completely winning for the white pieces. So let me know in the comments if you actually went this far. Anyways, let's go ahead to the next exercise. And this one is a little bit trickier, I think. It is white pieces to move. And once more, you gotta look at your candidate moves. I'm trusting that all of you considered the move pawn to g5 right away. But the problem is when they take, they're hitting the king as well, and that's check. So that doesn't work. Rook h3 is not gonna do anything either. So the move is actually the very difficult knight e6. You're controlling these two squares. This is the, I think, the Anastasia pattern, because now if they take the hanging queen, well, that's the end of it. They block. We cannot take as in the Anastasia and do the checkmate with knight and rook, but the rook is actually pinning the queen, so you could do checkmate. And let me see what else could they do. Of course, if they take, this would be, oops, sorry, this would be mate. And that's it. That's it. This is definitely what we're looking for. Of course, they could just take the knight, but we get the rook, g5 still in the air. Very, very nice position from this moment on. All right, so exercise number 3, this is made in 6 moves, and this is meant for you to calculate, to visualize, and exercise that area, right? Well, as always, we look at the checks first. I'm trying to give you, when we do this, for now, I'm trying to give you things that are forcing, pretty straightforward, pretty, I don't want to say linear, but pretty straightforward, right? So in this one, we gotta start with the move bishop h6. And is it forcing? Well, it's not even check, right? So the black pieces have options, but you gotta ask yourself, what am I threatening? Well, we're threatening to lift that knight and deliver checkmate, right? Now they could still, after bishop h6, they could try to, I don't know, maybe move the rook to f8. Well, we got bishop g7, king takes g7. If the king simply goes to g8, you got check, king takes, and then after rook g8, rook h7, king g8, rook g2, they have the option to block with the knight, but whatever they do is just gonna be checkmate, right? Now, what if they actually took the bishop on g7? In that case, we go with the same idea, king g8, rook g2, and once they block, we could just take. Um, I think there's no other line that is that critical. I think this is it. Just finding that bishop h6 followed by rook takes h6, and we have to consider it. Even though it's not a check, the only move that is a check here is rook h6, but it's very easy to disregard. So I trust you went through this process. Rook h6 first doesn't work. Well, let me look deeper into my second candidate move, which is bishop takes. All right, this next one also made in 6. I think this one was a little bit tougher than the one before, but of course, candidate moves, we got queen d8, queen d4, queen f4, queen takes rook, and the move is actually queen f4. If the king could go both to e7 or to g7. If they go to e7, then check, only move, check, they could block with the queen, and then you finish them with checkmate. The other line is after queen f4, instead of going to e7, they could go to g7, and then once more you gotta look at your candidate moves and so on. In this case, this is what works. They gotta take the rook or the queen comes down, and after they take it, queen f7, going down easy. Going to h6, well, we're gonna have queen f8. Going to g5, we have this pattern, checkmate. You should be more than familiar with it. And of course, going down, we're gonna go check and checkmate. So let me go all the way back. Queen f4 and try to visualize the rest if you couldn't find it. All right, let me go to the next one. And this one is very interesting. I'm pretty sure a lot of you struggled with it because you got to do two things about this exercise. Number one, you got to find a way to, and I didn't specify, I don't think so, but you got to find a way to convert this into a winning end game. And you got to do it in a forcing manner. So basically, the way to go is queen f7, queen takes, and then right here, you must take on f7 first, king takes, rook f8, king takes, and then we take back. And we get into a king and pawn endgame that is a very easy win. If you've been following this training plan, if you've been following my YouTube channel, you should know how to win this. Now, and I gave you some videos also to study as part of this week's training plan. But I wanted to really emphasize this. We had to take with the bishop first. If you take with the rook first, thinking it's the same thing, it is not, because when the bishop takes, it's not forcing, you're not hitting the king. So they could just move this guy away, and then instead of having a very easy king and pawn endgame, you have king, pawns, and bishops endgame that is a little bit more complex. And being opposite color bishops makes it very, very drawish. So let me go back to the right continuation. Bishop first, check. Rook takes, check. So simplification is forced. And then I asked you to finish it against the engine. The main thing that you gotta remember is, well, activate your king. And then the main key here is I got 2 versus 1 on the queen side. So that means I'm going to create a pass pawn, but it's not any pawn. It is an outside pass pawn. Meaning, when I create my pass pawn on the queen side, this king will have to go after it. By the time I take their pawn, which is also a pass pawn, and they take ours, our king is going to be closer to the rest of the pawns. And that's why outside pass pawns are so important. So the key is not to do this move because we want to play c4, right? But then b4 is going to be a pawn that stops two pawns. Doesn't mean that you're not winning here, but just be careful with that. If you do it at the wrong moment, you could get in trouble. One way to do it is just go c3, then b3. You see, you never give them the opportunity to block your two pawns, and then you got c4, and they're gonna go for the pawn. If they don't, let's say they do something like this, you could go c5, take. Now, by the time I take yours, my king is simply closer to the rest of the pawns. So let me know in the comments how you did with this one. I'm very, very curious because this is really important. Being able to go from a position like this, identify the end game that you want to go in, that you want to get into, the end game that that you're familiar with, and then finish it there. So let me know. That way I know if I should give you more exercises like this or less or none. Let's see. All right, number 6, pretty straightforward. This pattern, you should be familiar with it. If not, well, now you have it. And it has to do with the fact that these two are on the same rank. Oh, let me see. They're on the same rank, and my rook is on the G file. So basically what we want is bishop f6, and we get into the windmill. I'm going to get your queen, or when you take me, I'm going to go check. Then I take a moment here to take a little bit more and check. And this is the windmill. Check. The king has to go back. Check. And then here, you don't want to go all the way back and get the pawn. I don't want to open up this rook. Instead, you go straight for the queen. You go, give me the queen. They could play king g6. You could even go rook h3 and then take on h6. Completely up to you. But this is already winning for the white pieces. Now, number 7 is white to move. I trust you are. I trust you got this one. This one is simpler. White to move. We gotta look at the candidate moves. Candidate moves that should come to mind right away are: number 1 is a check. Number 2 is a check. Number 3 is a check. And we explore. Now, if you're still making the mistake of looking at a move like this and saying, oh, no, it cannot be the move, I'm dropping the queen, you gotta correct that. You have to be like, okay, it doesn't look like a good move, but let me visualize it, like really see it on the board before I give up on it, right? And in this case, most of my students, when they do it, they go into this line: rook takes, queen a7, then king goes down, queen takes, knight on b8, king e7, and then they realize the king just runs away. They don't have anything concrete. So if you change the move order, instead of rook c7 followed by queen a7, if you go queen a7 first, then that's a very simple checkmate in 3 moves. At this point in our training plan, week number 6, it should be pretty easy for you to find that. All right, number 8. Let me see. Yeah. So number 8 is a little bit more complex because we have more pieces. Classical position where we have opposite side castle kings, and as you can see, it's about crazy attack on each other's kings with pawn storms and pieces and so on. So here everything has to be forcing. They're coming down with everything they've got. So at least we have to be energetic, right? Well, the move is pawn to f6. If you simply go back, I'm going to put my queen on h6, right? So let's say you go to g8, queen h6. We all know this. If instead they do take the pawn, well, let's say if they go back to h8, well, queen h6, they could still block or bring the rook over to defend g7. But after I open up, let's say they take with the f pawn, I think we have a very easy checkmate pattern here. We take rook h1, you can block, but then this is just checkmate. And by the way, this is important. I put it here because we're going to do another exercise later that has to do with this same pattern, the pawn on f6. Never forget about this. What else could they have done? They could have taken, but then queen g5, check, and then we get to f6. So the same thing. All right. Now let me go. Let me see. There was a line here. Okay, so here, what if they had taken? That's another thing that we have to keep in mind. Well, one move I like is just king b1, getting in front of the pawn. Don't let them put you in check again, and then they have to deal with this line. You could also have just run away, and again, you renew the threat of g7 checkmate, right? All right, let me see what else do we have. Two more. This one, pretty straightforward. Not pretty straightforward. The idea is going to come to mind right away. So white pieces to move. The question is, how do we make the most out of this discovered check? Well, the move is indeed rook to d7. When you were calculating it, you probably didn't find it because you were, well, after bishop c4, rook f7, I don't think I can really checkmate that king, right? And I believe I did put in the training plan, you're looking for forcing mate or something like that. Well, the key is to really control your emotions, control your impulse. And instead of going for bishop c4 right away, which all of us think automatically we gotta go rook g7, then the same discovered like we saw in the windmill, more or less. And then, of course, they could block with the pawn, we take it. They could block with the rook, and we take it. All right, so last exercise. This one, I think you should be familiar with the patterns. It's just that there are different patterns that we have to put together. First move, of course, we take the pawn. We're hoping they block with one of their pieces, and then checkmate since we're pinning the bishop, right? Well, the main line is if they block with the bishop, we deflect the queen from defending this guy, we take it, and after queen h7, rook h6, game over. That is checkmate. So there you have it, guys. I hope that you found these exercises useful. Our training plan is going to be changing a little bit week over week from now on. Let me know in the comments your feedback, the way we can adjust it. I'm using Roberto and Omar as a model or as a way for me to see what's working and what's not. But if you let me know in the comments, I will definitely take it into consideration. With that said, see you in our next video.